stream, and I don't know what we'll be talking about, but I'm sure that some people who see the title of the stream will lose their mind, and that is, in my opinion, absolutely hilarious. So let's just wait and see what happens with that. Uh, it'll be a minute. It always takes YouTube and everything a minute to see. There I am. I'm live. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greenland would have been good too, but it's like the people of Greenland and Denmark are like, no, we don't want to do it. And it's like, it's cute how you think you would have a choice. But, if we just go ahead and buy it, play hardball with Denmark and pretty much get them to sell it, then my wife's got the news way up. Sweetie, the TV's really loud. So we'll see if anybody shows up. I'm just painting. But I like putting inflammatory names on my live streams. Sometimes it brings very interesting characters to the live stream. We had a great one on a couple days ago. He was from New Zealand, and he was trying to explain to me how New Zealand could defeat America in a war. So I looked it up, and it turned out New Zealand's entire military, including reservists and civilian personnel, is 14,000 people. Right? The crew of one of our super carriers is just about that big. So it's like, what? What are you thinking? Get out of here. But in reality, there's Leth. Hey, Leth, how you doing, homie? That is a lot of money. And nothing to show for it. I don't like that. Why am I having a hard time with this? Okay. Oh, they worked something out with the Europeans. Well, you knew Trump would, though. I mean, because the reason I knew Trump would work something out with the Europeans is because the Europeans have no cards to play. They can try and be mad, but it's not going to help them.
Hello.
Hey, Leth, how are you doing? I heard it warmed up there.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, and I'm just babysitting a little bit.
Just babysitting a little bit.
Yep, he's right behind me, sitting in my chair.
Oh. Yeah, I actually got a weird message on Discord from someone that I haven't heard. I talked to him a long time ago, but I haven't talked to him for a long time. And all it said is everything you said about Russia and Ukraine was totally right. And I was like, see, people got mad. But I knew. And one reason is when I was in the Army, I was assigned at one point to study Russian combat. Well, like how they do things, how they set up defensive positions, etc., right? And the book was huge. It was like, 500-page book that I had to study, as it was an assignment that was given to me by, a sergeant. And so I did. So not that I believe in the whole expertise thing makes somebody better than anyone else. I don't believe that. But in this particular case, I had studied the tactics and I did know how things were going to go.
Yeah,
You know what I
it's not
mean?
about expertise. It's more about knowledge here.
Yeah, knowledge, right? And
Yeah,
I was like, they're going to grind them down because that's what they do. And that's what they did.
a lot of problems people think is that because somebody has like a degree in something that makes them an expert in something.
Yeah, I know somebody like that. And they annoyed me so much that I threatened to beat their ass. It's one of my favorite niece's boyfriends. But I'm sure we'll get along just fine next time we hang out. But he's a guy. He went to university. He's got like a degree or two, and he just thinks that makes him better than everyone else. And I had to.
Look, it's him having to justify wasting all that money on that.
Well, he made me so mad that I jumped across the room and grabbed him and literally threatened him with physical harm. And he, of course, wasn't doing nothing. Uh, you know, and I told him, I said, take those glasses off, see what happens. And he wouldn't do it, which made my niece cry. And I feel bad about that. But, I'm not going to be lectured to by,
Some guy that
some leftist atheist that thinks he's better than somebody because he
they
went
went
to
to
university,
college.
you know?
That's the biggest joke whenever I hear in SpongeBob, like old school SpongeBob. It's like Plankton saying he went to college.
Mm-hmm.
Yet what he has is nothing.
Well, the thing is, it's like, I'm not hating on college. I think college is a great thing for some people.
It can be.
Not
You
for
gotta choose
me,
the
though.
right
I
word.
mean, I
You
can tell
gotta
you
choose
right
the right
now, not
things.
for me. I knew that I was not college bound by the time I was in third grade. Even though they put me in gifted classes and all that sort of stuff,
You didn't like going
I
to
had
school.
no interest in it.
You have no interest, yeah.
I didn't want higher learning. I wanted to run around
Anything
the
with how
woods.
my dad talks about his high school days, it's a miracle that he got through high school.
Right. I wanted to run around the woods and, explore and
Wesley, what he said is that he
do
just didn't
stuff.
go.
I did not want any part to do with the organized learning apparatus.
Half time, I wish I didn't go.
Well, what saved me as far as from being a complete idiot, I think, is the fact that my mom always kind of assigned us books to read. So even though I wasn't interested in school,
You were
I
still
was
interested in
still
learning something.
reading things, Lord of the Rings, Dostoevsky, uh, Solzhenitsyn, because my
Fairly
mom,
enough, fair enough, because I mean, if it wasn't for the internet, I probably wouldn't be as smart as I am.
right?
I'm not a
Well, the
genius.
internet
You know,
is like the most misused thing ever
yeah,
because people have turned it into porn and cat videos. And yet it's like all the information humanity has ever developed, ever, can be had on the internet pretty much.
if it wasn't for the internet, I wouldn't know half the things about, like, military guns or, old battles as I do now.
Yeah. Well, that's a guy thing. Guys, for whatever reason, men love history. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, even though to be fair, my favorite class when I was in like middle school
It
was
wasn't
home
history
ec.
for me. Or, well, I didn't even take home ec. Huh.
They got rid of it when they started,
Yeah.
and it's one of the classes that if I were in charge of the education system, home ec would definitely be one of the classes.
Mm.
Like I learned so much in home ec that actually was of real world worth.
Yeah, I probably should have done something in auto shop instead of almost nothing.
I didn't do auto shop, but back then we had wood shop.
There was a choice, I think, for wood shop too. One of my friends took it.
Yeah, and you know what we all built?
What?
Gun racks.
Gun. Oh, well, that's fair. My friend decided to turn it into an art thing and make like things from his favorite games, like the Keyblade from Kingdom Hearts or something. He
Yeah,
couldn't call it that
you're like
because
20 years younger than me, so
he couldn't call it a
back
Keyblade.
when I
But
was
yeah,
in wood shop, everybody had shotguns in the back of their trucks.
yeah, I know.
So making a gun rack actually made sense, you know?
Yeah.
It was a useful thing. Uh, Now, if you try to make a gun rack in one of these schools, they'd probably call the cops on you and
Suspend you. A lot of
try
other
to
things.
get you sent to a mental ward or something.
Yeah.
Burfin, hi, ho, lol. Okay.
Verdant. Looks like it says Verdant.
Like a verdant mountain, maybe?
Maybe?
Which would be, I believe, if my dungeon master skills are correct, would be a mountain that's like covered in like vegetation.
That's what I'd guess.
Yeah, you know, like a verdant, rich, full of life mountain. So basically, Eastern Kentucky.
Yeah.
But right now, I am painting the armor. These guys are going to be easy because anytime you paint a warrior that's just wearing like all encasing plate armor, it's like, how hard can that be? You know, you paint it the metallic color, you put the wash on it, and then you maybe do a dry brush and it's done. But I am painting Hell Knights from the army is called the Seven-Headed Serpent. So this army, unlike the Heretic Legion, do you like Great Zelensky? No, I think Zelensky is a scumbag, and
Zelensky's a dumbass.
I see. Here's the thing: you're new to my channel. I am Russian Orthodox, so you see all those signs over there, and I know that the whole war was a scam, and Zelensky is a scumbag who, with the help of the CIA, benefited from a coup d'etat, right? So the sooner that this is all over, the better. It's like, see, the problem is people in the West don't realize that for like 10 years, the great Zelensky was sending his Ukrainian troops into the breakaway republics and killing ethnic Russians. And for like years and years and years, he was killing civilians.
Obsidian.
And finally, the Russian government was like, yeah, that's enough of that. So, but if I had my way, Ukraine wouldn't even exist. And it really shouldn't. The only reason it exists is because when the Soviet Union broke up, they agreed to let it exist. Yeah, give it back. Well, I mean, the Cossacks all work for the Russians now.
Giving it to the Cossacks is like giving it to the Russians because they consider themselves Russian.
Right. I mean, so, but anyway, yeah, these Hell Knights are basically damned humans that, you know, are actually part of the hierarchy of hell. So, you know, they have some demonic blood in them. So in D&D terms, these are tieflings. And occasionally they go out from hell because they live in hell. But occasionally they travel through the gate in Jerusalem and they form hunting parties and travel around no man's land killing things. And sometimes they'll even kill like heretics if they encounter heretic legions, or, you know, of course they'll kill Christians if they can encounter them. But yeah. But I'm painting them bronze, and you can see how big they are. That's a 40 mil base, right? And then they're going to get like a lot of
nice figure.
Yeah, these figures, I just pulled them off the printer last night and put them in the UV box, and now I'm actually painting them. There's 3 different ones. One has a rifle, one has a great axe, and the other one has a siege shield and a one-handed weapon. Cambions, yeah, maybe Cambions would be more correct. Now, the one that it's going to be fun to paint is this guy.
That looks interesting.
Yeah, this is, in Revelation when it talks about the horse-sized demonic scorpions with crowns of flame and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's these.
Yeah.
Because if you play a army of the 7-headed serpent, you can have up to 3 of those in the army. And they fly, so they can ignore terrain. Yeah, as soon as I saw those, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to paint some of those.
Well, James, here's something interesting. You know that mech game I was telling you?
Yep.
Well, I've got to play the the beta of it.
Yeah.
Well, it's basically the game's basically the story is basically a resource store where you fight the resource.
Where you fight the resource.
Yeah. There's like this crystal that humans were mining for certain new tech, and it's like, oh, actually, these things might be alive. Oops. Oh, well.
We got James Lowry in the house. James Lowry in the house.
Also, it's kind of fun. Yeah, pretty fun, actually.
I mean, I responded to a statement, but I want to make sure that I'd be like, what up? Yeah, Hungar said that he was going to be streaming today. I should probably send him a message or call him or something.
Yeah.
And be like, where you at? Where you at, boo? But yeah, these guys are going to get a really grimy, shade of like a mix between Vallejo black, brown, and maybe even some red.
Yeah, I would have said red, brown, and maybe some black. Yeah.
Yeah, just to make them look really hellish, since they are in fact Hell Knights. And man, there was a video a guy made like weeks ago. He was talking so much shit about the creators of this game. It was really entertaining and enlightening. But it was from the time when the creators of the game decided to leave Twitter and go to Blue Sky.
Well,
And this guy's like, yep, if you want your game to fail, you're doing the right things. Because you're not going to get as much, eyeballs on the game on Blue Sky as you would on Twitter. And also when the people on their Discord, which they ended, were just banning people for having slightly conservative views. They created a new Discord and did the same thing.
Look what George posted.
Had written blasphemy. Yeah.
Also, gotta say, I really like the character customization in that game.
In the other game?
That Mecha Brick game, it has some good character customization.
Right. But yeah, so apparently the guys who created this game, to a degree, are shitheads. I had hoped not, because I know that the artist behind the game went to a Christian university and has a crucifix hanging on his wall. Because when they interviewed him, you could see it. So, yeah, I'd really hoped not, but apparently they are. Which makes him a fake Christian, because you can't be Christian and leftist. That's just impossible. As a matter of fact, I was watching a thing on YouTube today. It was a philosopher talking about it, that liberalism and Christianity are directly opposed to each other, because liberalism wants there to be a generic God, which is the state. So the first thing they do is they try to convince people, is this a USA? No, not your echo. And the assholes in Ukraine trying to destroy the Orthodox Church, they are not in any way funded by USAID anymore. So good times. And it looks like Ukraine's getting ready to lose about half of its land. All of the Russian provinces east of Don River are probably going to be either allowed to become independent republics or just be part of Russia. So like I said, I'm not going to pull a razor fist and spin around in the chair, flipping everything off, but I was right. Even the master of the deal realizes that we got no cards. You know, the Russian army is rolling. The Ukrainian army is collapsing. The average age of a Ukrainian soldier right now is 40. So, you know, because they're just sticking at anyone that they can find on the front lines with like a week of training against Spetsnaz and, you know, Russian airborne. So, yeah, it's exactly what I said. They'll grind them down. And when they grind them down enough, they will, that's when you'll see the tanks. You know what I mean? But like I said, when I was in the army, I was assigned to study Russian combat tactics by my sergeant, one of the sergeants. It's a big old book. Like when they set up forts, they like to set them up like a Star David with like mortar pits in the points and all this and that. They just have the ways they do things. And I recognize it. I mean, because if your military basically is built around artillery, as theirs kind of is, then what that means is that you as a commander have to be patient. You know, you take your time. You artillery the shit out of places, and then you move up a little. And then you artillery the shit out of more places. And then you just move up a little. And when you finally have worn the enemy down to where they're just completely screwed, you bum rush them. I mean, anybody who's ever read any history of the battles on the Eastern Front of World War II would know this, because this is what the German or the Russians did every time. Just massive artillery bombardments until the Germans were basically cooked. And then the next thing you know, T-34s everywhere. You know, because that's what you do. Hell, that's what we do, the American. Well, we send infantry in, and then if anybody tries to mess with us, we call airstrikes.
You know, James, do you know who the father of modern artillery is?
Napoleon, right?
Nope.
Who is it?
Adolphus Gustavus.
Is he a Prussian?
Nope, he was Swedish.
Huh.
I just use his Latin name. I like it.
Well, yeah, Latin's a cool language, man.
But yeah, his name was Adolf Gustav, and he was basically the master of modern artillery.
Yeah, I know, like, while we were fighting the Civil War, the Danes and the Prussians decided to get into a war. And the Prussians brought just all the artillery. And, like, they literally just curb stomped the shit out of the Danes.
Yeah, one thing with Adolf Gustav, his main thing was, most people say that the way he used his light cannons was like, it starts off like terrible, but after like a little bit in the battle, he'll move them into like great positions.
Well,
And
Napoleon
win
was
battles.
amazing with his cannons, but I think the big thing that makes Napoleon the great commander that he was for the longest time was the way he split up his regiments or his army groups, I mean, into like regimental groups,
Yeah, he had
that they could respond really quick to anything, you know? And he would assign each regimental group artillery and some cavalry. So he basically, instead of having one giant army like everyone else was doing, he split his army into 10 little armies. But they could all support each other. And if there was a break in the enemy line, they could immediately take advantage of it too. Plus, your average French soldier marched like 25 miles a day.
Yeah, in the 30 years where Adolf Gustav did some really cool things until he died in it.
Yep.
Brought the end
There
of
was
the
a time, but
military.
I think it's under, since we're having the history show.
As far as I understand, the problem that Napoleon had was a problem of objectives, because he basically defined the objective. I'm going for Moscow, and he reached Moscow, but there was nobody there, so there was no Moscow.
Yeah, they had taken all the church bells and melted them down to make cannons out of them too. Because, but do you know though, Jose, since
Yes.
I know this and I love having the opportunity to tell people things I know that they may not, do you know why Napoleon invaded Russia?
I know that he was deciding between invading Spain and invading Russia.
Well, he'd invaded Spain already.
Yeah.
The Peninsular War.
Yeah.
Here is my other.
Really, he beat Spain pretty handily too. It's just that Russia didn't go well.
Well,
and I understand that Russia was helping Spain too, right? No.
Yeah.
Well, they formed the Grand Alliance to get rid of him, but the point of it was Russia really wasn't in the war until he invaded Russia, at which point it was on, right? Yeah. But the question that most people don't know is, why did he invade Russia?
Why?
Like, it's all the way across Europe. It's frozen and full of snow. I mean, why in the hell would you march your army that distance? Why would you do that? And that's why I'm asking you. Why do you think he did it?
Well, I think that the only reason would be because he had to defeat Spain, because he invaded Spain, but he did not defeat
Spain.
No, it doesn't have to do with Spain. No. My best guess, it might just be an ego trip. Maybe he thought, well, after I take out Russia, there's nobody to actually bother me on the land.
And George is right. That move ended with Donbass combat Cossacks in Paris.
Yeah. But
here is the real reason Zelensky surrendered. Yeah, I mean, I've told you, Frederick, all along, I've told you, I love being right. Being right is the best. It's so good. But I told you guys how this was going to end. And it's how it's going to end. Napoleon wanted to invade England.
Okay, yeah, he eventually wanted to, yeah.
But the problem was the English have an amazing fleet. But here's the thing. In the 1800s, every amazing fleet had all of the rigging and everything, which was made out of hemp rope, right? The hemp rope on a ship has to be replaced every 5 years. Because, salt water, seawater, whatever, just kills it, right? So every country in the continent agreed with Napoleon's demand that they not sell England any hemp except
I
for,
remember that. Yes.
Yep.
except for one country, which was Peter the Great, I think, who told Napoleon to F himself. He's going to sell the English all the hemp he can. So Napoleon thought he'd march across to punish the Russians. Did not work out. But at the end of the day, it was all about rope.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Wow.
weird how something so like
So
innocuous
trivial.
can lead to such big events?
Yeah, and it looks like he had the same fate of the clans, problem of logistics.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to make it about Valtech, I mean,
Yeah.
But yeah, because if he could have kept the continent in line, including Russia, he could have waited 5 years.
Yeah.
And the British fleet would have basically all had to been mothballed because they wouldn't have any rigging.
They would have
been nothing. At which point, Napoleon could have sailed across the channel, landed troops, and probably would have beat the British.
Yeah.
Russia was like, no, we're not playing this game.
Interesting, because I didn't know about the rope. I remember
I
that
forgot
there
about
was
it.
some. I remember that there was some support to England that Napoleon didn't want, but I did not know the specifics.
It was rope. Isn't that silly?
Yeah.
It sounds like it, but I mean, it did have a greater purpose with the ships.
But like up there, you see all my pirate ships. Well, you can't really see them. Let me tilt this up. You see all my pirate ships and my frigate and everything up there? I rigged them out with this semi-elastic thread. Let me tell you, there's a lot of rope on one of those ships. Because doing it even in like miniature at 28 mil, holy, there's a lot of rope on those ships.
Wow.
And it's like, so that was the thing. England had the fleet. Napoleon knew if he tried to invade England, his ships would be sent to the bottom. So he was trying to, it was a smart idea. It's a smart idea to deny your opponent a resource and then take advantage of, the weakness.
It was a cool concept, but with poor implementation, right?
Well, because he thought that the Tsar of Russia would just back down. Shadow, what is up, my homie? My homeboy, the man in black, as we say. But yeah, the idea was great. But he thought that the Tsar of Russia would just bow down. He didn't realize that the Tsar of Russia was going to be like, nah, eat a bag of Richards. You ain't my boss.
I enjoy listening those cool stories that James has to tell us.
Well, I read a lot
know.
of history when I was young.
Yeah, and that's
My
cool.
mother, like I
Very
said,
cool.
my mother insisted.
Yeah, I was drawing, you were reading.
Yep. So yeah. The whole thing, the whole rule of Napoleon, his conquest of Europe, was stymied by a stubborn Russian and hemp rope. And that was it. Nothing you can do or say about it. That's just how it goes. And that's all the news that's fit to tell.
Yeah, but it looks like he aimed politically and not logistically, right? Because if not, he would be trying to conquer the logistic centers for rope or something like.
Yeah, but there was only one logistic center for rope. Russia.
Yeah.
Because the Russians were growing tons of hemp and they were sending it to frickin' England. And the English were using the rope so that they could re-rig all of their ships. So Russia had to be stopped. Yeah, so he decided, let's march the Grand Army over there and stop them. And it didn't work because
Russia had a plan for that. just basically move back and burn everything.
Burn everything, move back,
Mm,
let the Cossacks kind of ghost the French army.
Yep.
So that anytime the French army would try to send a unit out to forage for food, the Cossacks would jump them en masse and kill them.
Yep.
So, the French basically got trapped by their own bullshit,
attrition war.
Yeah. And the Cossacks, they would just kind of hang back, and watch. And as soon as any unit of the Napoleonic army, of Napoleon's army, would break away, they'd rush in and just boom, done, And so now the main army's unable to forage. Everything in front of them, every wheat field, everything that they could have ate has already been burnt to the ground. And they're starving to death. And okay, so it wasn't Peter the Great. It all goes in a full circle. Look at that. So it's like, yeah. I mean, the Cossacks basically pulled the Mongolian tactics on the French army.
Although I think my favorite story was probably of Carolus Rex.
Of who?
Carolus Rex, the 15-year-old king of Sweden.
Oh.
Him and his
Well,
Carolingians.
Sweden for a while was a real pain in Russia's ass.
Yeah, well, the thing is, whenever
they were constantly invading Russia.
Whenever
like every other day.
Whenever three other major nations heard about the 15-year-old king, they're like, "Oh, he's going to be an easy target." All declared war on him, and he just wiped the floor with all three of them.
I have a story that you may like to know about Napoleon III.
Okay.
Did you know that the word Latin America or America Latina was basically an attempt to expand the French influence in the continent? Because before that it was Hispanoamerica. So it is Hispanic, basically, right? So because the influence was from Spain, but they tried to French was also a Latin-derived language.
Yeah, it's a Romance language.
Call it Latin America to justify the influence on Latin America.
And I mean, he was from Corsica.
So that's where the term Latin America came from. It was from
not
Napoleon
only that,
III.
but the Habsburgs put a Habsburg on the throne of Mexico. I think it was Maximilian, but he ended up getting overthrown by rebellion. Emperor Maximilian of Mexico. He was one of the Habsburgs. From what I read, he was actually a really good ruler and he really liked the people, but since he was French or Spanish or whatever he was, the people never stuck to him. They always viewed him as an outsider,
He's just an outsider rolling over them, so they did not like that.
Yep, they didn't care for it. So they had rebellions and all that. And that's where you get the story of the French Foreign Legion guys that fought to the death, and that fought against 100-1 odds in Mexico. And the one guy lost his hand, and his preserved hand is still displayed at the French Foreign Legion headquarters in Paris, because those guys were like, yep, we're fighting to the death. This is how it's going to be. It was like,
how big was his chin?
How big was what?
How big was his chin?
No, he Maximilian, he was a Habsburg, but he wasn't super inbred like the one you guys are talking about. But yeah, just for some reason they never he tried everything he could to get the people to like him and his wife, and it was just a no-go. They just weren't doing it because they didn't like being. I think they were not big fans of being a French colony, which is basically what they were.
Funnily enough,
Yeah,
Napoleon didn't like that either until he became high up in the French
right.
political system.
But see, Napoleon, even though some people want to claim he's like evil or whatever, if it were not for Napoleon, they'd probably still be guillotining people's heads over there.
True.
It was Napoleon that rose to power and put an end to all that shit. You know, with Robespierre and all that, just beheading 1,000 people a day or whatever they were doing. And Napoleon was like, no, we're not doing that.
Nope, I'm leading now. You
Calm the
gotta
hell
follow
down.
me.
But, you know, I mean, the thing with the French is, I don't know what it is about them, but they deep down inside have a incredible love affair with communism. Like, if you actually read the French revolutions that happened in 1600 whatever and 1700 whatever, every single one of them was a communist revolution.
Yeah.
And they were all, their primary goal was always removing God from government because they hated God. And what we call modern day liberals is based on them. The whole idea of Western liberalism is actually based on a bunch of French communists.
In Spain, like for example, in Spain nowadays, it is very difficult for people to express their beliefs because they are used to the idea that believing in God has brought to some oppressive moments during different stages of their story. So basically, expressing religious opinions there is very difficult in Spain nowadays.
I mean, they still have a king. He was put on the throne by Francisco Franco or whoever it was.
Yeah. Franco
was a member of the right party, but I think he was actually a fascist, but he allied with the Carlists and who the Carlists were monarchists. And the people they were fighting against was a collection of liberals and communists, which is why if you ever look into like the French Civil War, the Germans supplied Franco's side with most of their Lend-Lease equipment. And then the other side was supplied by Russia.
Indeed, the Junker Stuka basically had their training target practice in Spain during the Civil War in Spain.
And the best part about that dive bomber was it scared the shit out of people.
Yeah, until the Battle of Britain, when they were basically like attracting Spitfires and hurricanes.
Yeah, I mean, a Stuka is not going to out, dogfight a Spitfire. Spitfire is one of the greatest World War II airplanes ever created.
Yeah.
The Spitfire, the Yak-9, and of course, my favorite, the Mustang.
The Mustang P-51D.
Yeah, that thing, it had the range, it had the weapons, it was maneuverable as hell.
Yeah.
Man. Yep. I remember reading from a memoir of a German officer, and he said he knew the war was lost because he walked out of the Reichstag. They'd been in there, planning something. And he walked out of the Reichstag and he looked up and he saw American P-51s flying over Berlin. And he was like, we've lost. I mean, if your fighters can get to our capital,
It makes me think of another story I heard about that. Like, I think it was like, this one American prisoner was just sitting there waiting for the Americans to rescue him. And it's like, that like one of the Russian officers, like, that's never going to happen. Nothing, no Allied plane has ever been over these guys. And then they like starts hearing bombs, and it's like it's an American planes, and then it's like, well, that doesn't look German to me.
Yeah, I was watching a show on YouTube last night, and this guy was talking about
I'm not getting that exactly right, but I can't remember
FTR
the
called
thing.
Henry Ford into his office, and they hated each other pretty bad. But Henry Ford, despite some of his negative, let's say, opinions, was at the end of the day a hardcore American patriot, right? And they asked him to build like B-24 Liberators for the Air Force, right? So Henry Ford, by the time he set his production up, he was cranking a bomber out a week. It was a day. And then the other company was cranking out like a Fletcher class destroyer one a week. And they were just like, because the president called in all these, what would in the current day be billionaires, called them all into the office and said, this is what I need. And they were all like, okay. And they walked out. And the next thing you know, we made 60,000 Sherman tanks and more boats than I think anybody really knows, and an Air Force that could just level anything. So, yeah.
In a very short span, our Navy doubled in size.
Right.
There is another story that you may like to know. It is about how the lies of Japanese pilots made them lose the air war. It is because Japanese intelligence knew exactly how many planes United States had in each base at a certain point in time, and they knew exactly how many planes were sent and to where. So the only remaining piece of information was how many downed planes were, how many destroyed planes were there in the front, right? So, and you had very cocky Japanese pilots who were lying about the amount of planes that they were downing. And there was even some moments in which they reported more downed planes than the ones present in both sides of the combat. So and basically that caused the Japanese intelligence to send less planes to support battles because they should face a smaller force, right? And that also was told by Yamamoto after the Battle of Guadalcanal, that there was very little air support, but
to be fair, I don't think that's what caused them to lose, but it definitely didn't help. It probably sped up the loss.
Well, you know what?
Yeah, because they always had an inferior force.
Yeah, what caused them to lose is the fact that the Japanese, under no circumstance, were ever going to keep up with American industry. They didn't have the metal. They didn't have the manpower. They didn't have anything. I mean, by the mid-war, they were making air soccer rifles in workshops in people's backyard because that's what they had to do. Whereas we were putting aircraft carriers, just cranking them out one a month. You know what I mean? It's like whatever. There's every single battle.
And not only that,
well, not every single battle. That's hyperbole. Almost every battle that we fought against the Japanese, we outnumbered them and had better equipment.
Yeah, it sucks. But
what
Japan
they had was attitude.
In no place to...
That's what made the Japanese fearsome, because they had a bad attitude about things. You know, they weren't just going to take it; they were going to.
Biggest problem: Japan could not innovate because they didn't have the resources to innovate, and it just death spiraled them. Because America was going to not just pump out things, but also improve it while they're.
Oh yeah, if you look at the Sherman, like the first Sherman that was ever put into production and given to the men, and then you look at the mid and late war variants for us, mid and late war, not for England. It just kept getting better. And that's why they say everybody thinks every other kind of tank is better, but look up number of Shermans destroyed versus number of tanker casualties.
Not only that, we almost brought the Pershing out
Well,
in
it
time for
fought like
World War
one
II.
tank battle. But
Yeah,
the
I know.
Pershing
That's why I
came
say
into its
almost.
own in Korea
Yeah.
because it was the heavy support tank for the Shermans. And Korea, the
Yep.
Korean War shows the real deal because the Koreans and their Russian advisors were using T-34-85s against Sherman jumbos. And the Sherman jumbo, it was like a 9-to-1 kill ratio. So, I mean, definitively speaking, the Sherman was a better tank than the T-34. It was just a better tank. And why did we build a light medium tank instead of heavy tanks? I mean, if we're going to talk history, that's a big question. Why did we build a relatively light medium tank instead of heavy tanks like everyone else was building? The answer, it's
Resources?
easier to transport the medium tanks across the ocean.
Oh,
That's it. That's the only reason. That's why the Pershing showed up so late. It's because you've got these merchant marine ships. They can only carry so much of whatever, right? So you make these relatively light medium tanks that are super easy to work on. And they're made for, they're generally, the Sherman was a jack of all but a master of none tank. And I mean, there were some
It
that
was
were more
mainly an
specialized,
infantry support tank,
like
I
the
think.
Easy 8s and stuff were a little bit more specialized, and we could just ship them. Ships full of those things. We built so many Shermans and shipped so many Shermans to the European theater that we gave like a whole army of them to France. When we started liberating France, we gave them a whole army. For the longest time, the British were using Sherman tanks, and the Russians had Sherman tanks. And the Germans, when they captured a Sherman tank, would use it. That did happen. I have seen photographs of a Sherman tank painted gray with the German iron, their Wehrmacht symbol on that thing.
I'm pretty sure literally every nation used Sherman
at some point. The Sherman tank saw battle in basically every theater of the war. It's one of, if not the only tank that can brag that. You gonna put Shermans against Tigers? Yeah, Kelly's Heroes was an amazing movie. I love that movie.
That was one really good movie. Yes.
Or the League of Augsburg. Well, we're having a world war right now. It's just we don't care because of where it's happening. Right now in Africa, like 12 different nations are full blown going at it. All around South Congo, the Republic of South Congo, you've got like everyone's involved. South Africa is involved. All these countries are involved, but we're American or European for some people, so we don't give a shit. But yesterday in South Africa, they beheaded 100 Christians. Not in South Africa, South Congo. Okay, Jose.
Oh, hey James, do you know why the Shermans would purposely avoid shooting the Tigers?
Because it wouldn't do anything good to them.
It's more that they were aiming at the infantry.
Well, because the original 75 millimeter gun, I think it was, had a really good
do much
HE
against
round.
a Tiger.
So it was really good at taking out infantry, pillboxes, positions.
And here's another thing. German military tactics meant that a lot of infantry would stand behind the tank and support them. And if you take out the infantry, that tank's going to soon be alone, and it's not going to be useful.
Well, and another thing was, for a long time, America expected tanks to support the infantry, and then they had tank killers. And their whole job was just to kill the tanks. And you had like the Wolverine and the, what was the other one? But they were basically open topped. The hull was Sherman, but they had a different turret that was open top, and they had a gun designed to freaking kill German tanks.
Yeah, were you talking about the M18 Black Cat?
Well, I think Black Cat was the freaking the unit.
Oh yeah, that was probably the unit.
Yeah, their
Yeah,
actual
M18s.
shoulder patch was a Black Cat. And there were a lot of black dudes that
Oh,
were in the
welcome
unit.
back, Jose.
But you had like the
Okay.
Wolverine was one. I can't remember the other ones because I never used them in Flames of War.
Yeah, I can remember there being like the M18, the M36, GMCs.
Yeah. And these things,
But I don't know if they ever got
basically, they were really, really fast. And so if American tanks encountered a lot of German tanks, they would call these guys up. And these guys were super fast and not very well armored, but they would pretty much run in like the fire department.
By the way, James, did you know that there are some YouTube videos about the war with tanks and things made with Lego?
Yep.
Yeah, there are plenty of videos of that, and they are cool.
Well, I mean, you know, some of these guys, these Lego guys are actually, I hate to say it, but they're actually like true artists. You know, like I could never do the stuff that they do. And ability.
Yeah, I mean, I used to play with Legos a lot, but most I did was make a very weird abstraction of like Command and Conquer with them.
See, that's what, when I played with Legos, I built just random shit. Like I never, back when I was a little kid, they probably did have the kits, but they also just had the box that was like 1,100 Legos or some shit, right?
Yeah, I had a box like
and
that.
that's what I got, you know, and it was just a bunch of random colored Lego blocks. And it was like, build whatever you want.
When I was a kid, I didn't have too many pieces of Lego. So basically, what I made was some tiny, somewhat action figures or semi-humanoid figures to pretend that they were like the enemy army or something like that, with some Star Wars action figures that were very few. And for the playsets, I had to use cardboard. And so this is how I learned about making cutouts.
Right, like the
buildings and stuff, you know, to make the playsets using cardboard.
You know, I've got for Talislanta, which is the download, they have a it's like a Paper Heroes booklet that has like all of the different playable archetypes from Talislanta, but they're paper. So you can just print it out and hand, you know, put it on a standee and hand it to.
Wow. Okay.
Because I mean, when you're playing a game that has like 100 archetypes, don't, unless you're very creative, I wouldn't really have too much hope about getting, you know, setting specific miniatures. You know, it's probably. Now, they did make some, but they weren't the most useful ones they could have made. And I've sent them emails asking if they're going to make more, and I have not got an answer back at all. So maybe the STLs, the 8 STLs they sent out that's it. You know, we're done. Which they're cool. I mean, I've got one right here. Where is he? Where is he? He's got his big axe. I was just looking at him.
Hey, James, I sent you a meme. You want to see it?
You think what?
I sent you a meme. You should see it.
Okay, I'll look at it. Did I put him up here somewhere?
Oh, by the way.
Anyway, it's a Thrall, so he's all covered in tattoos and he's got a great axe. But do you remember what happened to us in the Bacage? Yeah, when they're talking about the tigers. But there's a thing also, if you actually study World War II, that American soldiers had to be trained out of, and it was called tiger fear. And what it was is because of the hype behind the Tiger tank, a lot of American GIs thought every tank they saw was a Tiger. Even if it was, a Panzer IV or whatever, right? Every time they saw a German tank, they just assumed Tiger. So the U.S. military made a video that they forced the soldiers to watch. And some of you guys who are in the military, you know what I'm talking about. Those crappy ass videos they make you watch about, sure, she's hot, but did you know she's got the clap? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I've seen some of those because they're on YouTube.
Right. You could see some of them on YouTube. Like there's one where they're trying to talk the American GIs out of being afraid of the MG-30 or 42. Because they're like, yeah, it fires fast, but that just means it misses more. Whereas our 30 caliber, it fires slow, but it's easier to keep on target and blah, blah, blah. And, basically they're just talking up our equipment and trying to make our soldiers less terrified of German equipment. But yeah, this is a thrall from Tauslanta. They are created 1,000 years ago by a group of wizards that were in the middle of a giant war and needed a slave race to fight the war. And then the war ended and both sides were completely demolished, but the thralls lived. And they tattooed themselves up like that because they all look identical. Basically, they're clone troopers. Every one of them looks identical with pale white skin and no hair. So they get tattoos, and sometimes the tattoos can mean things, and sometimes it's just random freaking swirly colors because that's just what the thrall wanted, That way they can tell each other apart. And the women look almost identical to the men, except without a penis. Which is a plus, in my opinion, if you're looking for women. Without a penis, that's a good one. That's a good start. Unless you're into that sort of thing, which I would highly not recommend. But hey, I'm just some guy on the internet. So, I will not condone it. But, so they're really good warriors. That's their thing. They're like massively strong. And the example would be, imagine if there was a race you could play in D&D that automatically started out with like a 19 or 20 strength. Just right off the bat. Don't roll strength. If you're playing this race, you are going to have max strength. However, your max intelligence is going to be like 10. And your wisdom's not going to be very good either. Because you were not designed to be smart. You were created to be strong and tough. And that's just the thing that thralls have to deal with. Which causes them, in some things, they talk about how thralls have a little bit of a, what do they call it? A inferiority complex. Because they know they're created and, it makes them feel like they're an inferior race to races that were not created, by a group of crazy wizards. But that's Tauslanta lore. I don't know. I could sit and talk about Tauslanta lore all day. But unfortunately, most gamers just never wanted to, learn about Tauslanta. And it's a real shame since it is in every way a better game than 5e. Actually, any D&D game that Wizards of the Coast put out, I will say that Tauslanta is definitively better. The only thing that would make Tauslanta not better than, like, say, AD&D or something like that is the fact that Talislanta comes with a presupposed setting. So if you're going to play it, you have to play it in that world because that's just how it is, you know? So it's like you're going to play AD&D and you're forced to play in Greyhawk. And I think a lot of D&D players were not fans of that. That kind of restriction. But still no elves or orcs or dwarves. They do have gnomes, but the gnomes are nothing like any gnome you've ever thought of. They're short and strong, and some of them are mages that can control the growth of crystals. So they're called crystalmancers. And, yeah. Bear, hero bear. All right. Let's see.
Hello, Hans Bricks.
Hello, Hans Bricks.
Hans Bricks, you're really pissing me off.
You're really pissing me off, Hans Bricks. Yeah. Sticks him in that aquarium with the freaking little Nerf shark.
Yeah.
Trick. I love the song too that he sings.
Ronry, I'm so Ronry.
So effing stupid.
I like the cats. They send in the Panthers. Just
yeah, they're like, it's Panthers, but I mean, you can obviously tell it's just cats.
Just regular old black-haired American domestic.
Now, what I want to know is what Trey Parker and Matt Stone, what their beef with Matt Damon is.
Nothing. It's just they said when they cooked the puppets, the puppet for Matt Damon got fucked up in the oven and it came out looking retarded. So they took all of Matt Damon's lines and reduced them to Matt Damon. And the funny thing was Matt Damon found out and was like, I want to voice myself. And they're like, we can't afford to pay you for SAG. But he was like, Matt Damon thought this was brilliant and really wanted to do it.
Well, then good for Matt Damon. I like when somebody gets mocked and they handle it, you know?
I have never seen Matt Damon not handle shit well. Like, you know what I mean?
Apparently when he was 15, he got in a lot of trouble because he beat a rabbi or something so bad that it, caused his retina to freaking separate.
Yeah. Well, I saw an interview where this guy was shitting on teachers, and Matt Damon went off on him because his mom's a teacher.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that.
Matt Damon put him in his fucking place.
Well, I can think of a couple of teachers I had that were absolutely amazing. Most of them I didn't like, but like the teacher who taught home ec, Miss Jurgensen or whatever her name was, absolutely an amazing teacher. She had a huge effect on me. But
Leth, why are you crying?
I'm not crying.
I'm not crying. I'm just cutting onions thinking about my teachers.
That's still in school.
Mrs. Penobscot.
I've been in school years.
That's like 15. He's been lying about his age the whole time.
He's just a big hairy 15-year-old. Is that it?
Yeah. Hey, Hungar had a beard in like middle school, so.
No, I couldn't grow a beard.
Hungar's a genetic freak. We don't use Hungar as a basis of comparison or a watermark, please.
For most of high school, I mean, it was just patches of hair on my face.
Yeah, Hungar had a full beard, and his beard, when it comes in, is blood red. Even though his hair is brown. But the beard is blood red.
Yeah, but I was ginger beard for the longest time, and then in my 30s, my auburn hair, like I had a red auburn ginger, and when I was in my 30s, it turned brown, but my beard stayed ginger, which was really funny because when we were kids, our minister at the Anglican Church, Reverend Allflat, was basically, he had a goatee and a really pointy one, and it was as red, as mine is, and he had brown hair, and we always used to think, like, does he dye his hair? Does he dye his beard? Which is it? Like, what's going on? Plus, he looked very satanic. It was very strange that our Reverend looked like he was like Satan. But no, he didn't dye anything. It's just this is what happens to gingers at some point. We just our hair goes, fuck you, I'm out. Bye. I'm leaving. I'm going brown.
Yeah. Well, like I said, yeah, there's no excuse for it. I mean, do I have redheaded people in my family tree? Yes. But Hungar decided he was going to be a ginger, but only the beard.
Yeah, Hungar, again, not a barometer for regular genetic things.
That's true. That's true. By the time he was conceived, my biological father had already been like dosed with Agent Orange for like a year.
Jesus Christ.
See, I was lucky. I was born before that. Hungar and my sister were born after he come home from leave from Vietnam, right? And had been wading through the jungle getting doused with Agent Orange. My sister died of an incredibly rare liver cancer when she was 27. And Hungar's, got everything wrong with him too. Whereas me, I've never even broke a bone.
Me neither.
Actually, that's a lie. When I fell, I crushed some vertebrae, but I wasn't going to count that, That was different. But
so what's Leth up to? Leth never turns his camera on anymore. What's going on, Leth?
My camera's broken.
Yeah, he broke his camera.
You've been getting your ass beat by a woman, so what's going on?
I mean, I could just use my phone if you really want.
No, it's okay. I don't have any rodent problems, so I don't need to see your face. I'm good.
Yeah, it's like whatever. But yeah, I was just ranting about Tauslanta and how people never gave it a shot. If they did, I think a lot more people would love it. But it was always like the little bitty plant living in the shadow of the great redwood that was D&D. And so everybody, of course, wanted to play AD&D because they wanted to play Tolkien role-playing or whatever. And the idea of playing in a truly alien world where there are no dwarves or elves or anything like that, but you can play a four-armed cannibal, a lot of players were just like, You would think that the people who are super fans of like Dark Sun would love Tauslanta.
That or Spelljammer.
Yeah, because there are multiple planes you can travel to from Tauslanta. There's actually a gate to hell in Tauslanta in the Shadowlands. It's not hell, it's their plane of death, but hell is adjacent to their plane of death. It's like you go through Hades and then figure out where, you know what I'm saying, depending on what deity you worshiped or not or whatever. Yeah. So that's why I'm such a huge proponent. And the only negative thing to say about Tauslanta is it is trapped in a setting. If you're going to play Tauslanta, you're going to play Tauslanta. I mean, that's what it is. It's not like D&D where you can just homebrew. I mean, in Tauslanta, you can homebrew parts of it, but ultimately, it's still Tauslanta.
No, there was a core book for the Omni system that was released when they were owned by Morgan Press. Morgan Press out of New Brunswick, Moncton, New Brunswick, here in Canada, owned Tauslanta for a while, and they released a core, like just a generic version of the rules called the Omni system. So,
Neat. Neat. Good to know. I would read that book because I know the Omni system by heart.
So it's kind of like Avalon Hill with RuneQuest.
Exactly. And again, as I was saying, like it's a decent enough system. It's not a bad system.
No, it's basically you roll die 20, add bonuses, subtract penalties, and then if you get a 10 or higher, you succeeded.
Yeah.
And the better you got, the better you succeeded. And if you roll a nat 20, then that's a crit. In which case, but you can partially succeed too. If you roll a 6 or better, it's a partial success, which means like in combat, you hit, but you only do half damage. You know, so yeah, it's an interesting system, and it allows for a lot of leeway in things. And yeah, we may play it this weekend. I know Hungar's been dying too. Like I said, we tried to play a vampire last night, and 30 minutes in, one of the players got a phone call. He and his wife had to leave. And then another player was sick as a dog anyway, but not like physically ill from like anything catchy. He had to go to the hospital because apparently he had ulcers or something. So he was feeling like crap. So we were finally like, if my homeboy over here is feeling like pure trash and we just lost a third of the party, we might as well just put this off, and catch it, in a week or two. And it sucks, but sometimes I guess that's just what you got to do.
Yeah.
Not that Bear's interested, but Bear, I'm painting Hell Knights.
That's nice.
Yeah. They're knights that are devoted to the powers of hell.
I would assume.
Yeah.
Though even where I grew up, Hell Night was the night before Halloween.
No,
Right.
I thought that they were going to be knights devoted to puppies.
Nope, those are called John Wicks. Yeah, right. That one dude who does the dog thing did a thing with John Wick. Like John Wick shows up in heaven and St. Peter's like, this guy's killed like 1,000 guys. So then God's like, you're not supposed to be here. You should be in the hot place. And then St. Peter, who's still reading the list, said, but the guy's killed his dog. And God's all like, oh, well, welcome in. Come on in. It's like, because according to that content creator, God really, really loves dogs. I'm not hungry right this second unless you're wanting me to eat with you. It doesn't have to wait. You can tell me I want to eat dinner with my. All right. Well, I mean, as much as whatever I'm having fun doing this, I'm sure I have fun doing that. So yeah, you guys heard. It is what it is.
See you later, man. Enjoy having a meal with your wife.
I will. Well, she's cooked all day a pot roast, so
that sounds good.
Get your ass over there and eat some pot roast, man.
Yeah.
See ya.